All right, well, thanks for joining, everybody. Appreciate it. This is Dan at the National Weather Service in Raleigh with our routine Monday weather briefing, which, after some busy weather last week, will feature much quieter weather, at least to start the week, which is certainly a nice departure from what we've seen as of late. So let's jump into the details here real quick. Like I said, much of the upcoming week, I would say the first half of the week is going to be dry. Today in particular, though, look for below normal temperatures out there. Feels great outside. Dew points are quite low. Definitely does not feel like the first week of June would normally feel, right? But that's going to be short-lived, okay? Because as we go through the week ahead, starting tomorrow, continuing through the rest of the week, we are going to see a gradual increase in temperatures across the area. We're going to go from 70s for highs today into the low to mid 80s tomorrow, mid to upper 80s by the time we get to the middle of the week. 90s will be in the cards by the time we get to late week into the weekend. The weather should stay dry, though, in terms of rainfall chances and showers and thunderstorms through Thursday. Okay, so today, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, really not looking at much of a chance whatsoever for rainfall across the area. The pattern, though, does become a little more unsettled by the time we get to Friday and through the weekend as we start to get some additional moisture in the area. We have a front approaching from the Ohio Valley. There's some thoughts that there could be some showers and thunderstorms near the coast as well. So the pattern overall starts to get a little bit more unstable and unsettled this weekend, but up until then, should be increasingly warm and dry. All right, so let's look at the actual precipitation forecast. You can see a lot of white on this map, suggesting not a lot of precip. So today, if there is anything, maybe the far eastern part of the state, Outer Banks, down through Morehead City, east of Wilmington. Really nothing across central North Carolina whatsoever. Pretty much the same story on Tuesday, nothing here. Same story Wednesday, nothing on the map. Thursday, you do start to see some of those increasing shades of green. Most of the precip that you see on that map for Thursday, though, is well to the south and east off the coast. We'll see what happens with Thursday's rainfall chances, but by and large, the majority of the state looks to be dry on Thursday. Like I said, things start to become maybe a little bit more unsettled by the time we get to Friday. The entire map is colored in with precip, but you don't really see any blues or purples or anything like that across the state. So the amounts that are on there are quite low, but stay tuned. We'll see if those totals themselves change. And when you add up all 5 days worth of rainfall there, again, you're not really looking at significant totals here, which again might be good news considering some areas got a decent amount of rain last week. Maybe a break is a good thing. So along those lines, no threat of excessive rainfall. We can just breeze past that pretty quickly. And like I said, the first half of the week dry, so there's no severe weather threat. And at least at this point, even though the pattern becomes a little bit more unsettled from Friday onward, there's no clear signal or suggestion that a severe weather outbreak or widespread severe weather or anything of that nature is in the cards. So severe weather, things are looking dry and uneventful at this point. Let's touch on the drought just real quick. This was the drought outlook, the drought monitor that came out on Thursday. Again, this does not reflect any precip that happened late last week into the weekend. So this will be revised by the time we do our next briefing on Thursday. You can see the D0 drought that's in place across central North Carolina is basically the western Piedmont. There are some pockets of drier conditions across the eastern part of the state, southeastern part of the state. Central North Carolina pretty much eradicated most of their drought about 2 weeks ago. The D0 and D1 areas that were across central North Carolina got wiped out given some of the heavier rain that we had earlier in May. But look for this to be updated again by the time we do our next briefing on Thursday. As we look out into the week 2 period, the 8 to 14 day outlook, I mentioned things, become a little bit more unsettled Friday through Sunday. That pattern looks like it persists into next week as well, which would explain why we have a little bit above normal precip chances on the right map there. And then consequently, normal highs this time of year are generally in the low to mid 80s, and there's a signal that maybe things will be a little bit above that temperature wise, as you see on the map on the left. In terms of hazardous weather across the area, really not much to talk about today, tomorrow, Wednesday. We do start to get into some increased chances for lightning, thunderstorm activity. Even though that Thursday is highlighted there, the much better chances look to be in the cards by the time we get to the weekend. And I would be remiss if I didn't at least acknowledge the heat threat. I had mentioned earlier that temperatures and humidities are going to start to increase as we get later into the week. Heat index values still look like they're going to stay about upper 90s, maybe 100 in the southern coastal plain. But this might be one of the first relatively prolonged stretches of warmer temperatures that we've had so far this year. So anybody who's sensitive to excessive heat or susceptible to heat-related illness may want to keep an eye on the forecast by the time we get to this weekend, because it will certainly feel like June by the time we get to Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All right, let's bring it home here. So dry for much of this week, below normal temperatures to start today, highs in the 70s, maybe around 80. As you can see from the temperatures on the bottom of the screen here, we'll be in the mid 80s by tomorrow, mid to upper 80s, touching 90 by the end of the week. The humidities are going to come up with that as well. So even though it might not feel like early June today, it most certainly will by the time we get to the end of the week, that's for sure. And, as is typically the case in June, we'll start to see some increased shower and thunderstorm chances across the area by the time we do get to Friday, carrying through the weekend as well. And of course, I already mentioned this about the heat-related illness. I put in a nod here too, just to acknowledge as thunderstorms develop across the area, gusty winds, probably the primary threat we're looking at, and of course, lightning as well for any outdoor activities that folks might have going on this weekend.